What's the most fucked up thing you did in a sleepover? I was in the bathroom. I could overhear whispers, so I knew they were going to play a prank on me. I thought that the prank would be that they would unexpectedly break the door open while I was in there. So, to counter-surprise them, I decided to only pretend I was on the toilet, and to instead hold the door shut by pushing against it with both palms, adding my weight to the door and preventing it from being pushed open. However, that was not their intended prank. They thought I was on the toilet, far from the door. So their idea was to have a sword thrust unexpectedly through the door. The sword went through the door and then straight through the palm of my right hand as well. Blood went everywhere. The sword went in and out quickly. I have vague memories of turning the sink on and wrapping my hand with hand towels even while blood spurted throughout the room. I don't remember getting in the car, but apparently I was driven to the emergency room. It's now 20+ years later. The rest of my hand is fine, but I have a small scar of light-colored flesh on my palm where I no longer have any feeling. Usually when I mention the story, I just say that I was stabbed through by a sword when I was a teenager, without going into detail on the how and why, which is significantly more stupid. The same person who did this prank on me decided to prank someone else by holding a knife right above a sleeping person's eye so that when they woke up the first thing they'd see is a knife blade close up. Thankfully, that particular incident resulted in only a scream, with no physical injuries. Looking back, I suspect he may have been an unhealthy friend to hang out with.
What is the most fucked up thing you have ever read on Reddit? What is the most fucked up thing you have ever read on Reddit? My dad was a manager at a department store for years and one day he got called to the back room. There was a girl sitting there with her mom, both looking pretty upset. The girl had been caught shoplifting and they wanted my dad to ban her from the store for life. My dad asked what she took and they showed him the items in a bag. It was about $50 worth of makeup, which my dad thought was pretty steep considering she looked like she couldn't be older than 12 or 13. He told them he would need to speak with her privately before making any decisions, so they let him take her into an office while her mom waited outside. He sat down across from this little girl and asked what she had to say for herself. She said that she didn't know why she did it, but that it had been happening for months now and every time she went into that store with her mom, all she could think about was how easy it would be to slip something into her pocket or bag without anyone noticing. She said that every time they went in there, all of the employees acted like they were too busy to help them right away or made some excuse why they couldn't look after them right then so they'd have to wait, even if there were only 2 other customers in the whole store at the time. So when no one paid any attention to her on this particular visit, she just couldn't take it anymore and decided enough was enough, time to put those skills I learned from watching Breaking Bad into action. So while her mom's back was turned looking at something else, little Miss Shoplifter reached into one of those drawers where all of their scarves were kept. It's not like anyone would notice if I took one. Slipped one into my pocket then waited until my mom turned around before putting it back again. I'm pretty sure I used some sort of Walter White I'm coughing because I just stole something cough as well. A few minutes later we're heading towards the exit when security stops us and asks us if we'd mind letting them check our bags before we leave, standard procedure. My mom says no problem but asks if there's anything specific they're looking for because otherwise this will take a while, smart lady. The guy says no not really but thanks for asking, so here's where things get interesting. My mom, oh wait. Actually yes. There is something you should probably check. Security guy, oh yeah? What's that? My mom, well earlier today we stopped by your store on our way home from somewhere else because my daughter really wanted some new scarves, specifically ones from your store because apparently yours are nicer than anywhere else. Security guy, My mom, so we walked around for a bit but unfortunately none of your employees were available at that moment so we decided to come back later. Security guy, okay. My mom, but when we returned later, my daughter told me that several different employees actually came up to us during our second visit and offered their help immediately without us having to ask. Security guy, and? My mom, and now I'm wondering which employees helped us during our first visit since none of these ones did. Security guy looks confused as hell but doesn't say anything as he turns around and calls over his coworker who happens to be standing nearby listening in on this whole exchange, smart lady number 2. Coworker comes over and my mom explains everything again while pointing directly at little shoplifter who looks like someone just told her Santa isn't real after all these years believing in him. This kid must have been good cause Santa totally effed with her mind big time. Coworker takes one look at little shoplifter then turns around without saying anything while walking off towards another part of the office area where he grabs a stack of photos off a desk before coming back over again. He hands these photos over to his buddy who proceeds to go through each photo individually until finally stopping on one picture which he holds up so everyone can see clearly, including little shoplifter who has gone completely pale by now. Damn good actress though. It's an 8x10 glossy printout photo showing little shoplifter holding up 2 different scarves above either shoulder while smiling happily next to 2 different male employees standing behind either side of here holding onto said scarves respectively while also smiling happily themselves. Apparently these 2 dudes had convinced Lil Miss Bad Girl that trying out their product samples out in front of them would make an excellent photo opportunity which apparently worked wonders since neither dude seemed fazed whatsoever by being caught red-handed helping someone steal merchandise out from under their employer's nose. After seeing this picture, my dad realized what happened but still felt bad about having banned this kid forever, since clearly whatever issues/problems she might have had weren't going away anytime soon. What made you happy today? My partner handed me his phone so that I could enter some data in his phone's notes section. After making the entry, as I was exiting the application, I stumbled across a note titled GM. These happen to be my initials. Now my partner is someone I look up to with utmost respect, as he is one of the most intellectually sound people that I have met. You know, the kinds who are voracious readers and the kinds whose arguments are backed by logic, and the kinds with whom you just can't argue because they graciously accept their mistakes before anyone else can point them out. He is also someone who cannot display affection. So that does make me feel unloved at times, and even though I have made peace with this aspect of him, I do feel a bit insecure. Coming back to the note titled GM. I clicked on it and what I saw made me extremely giddy with happiness. The note had two subtitles: migraine and periods. And under these subtitles, very neatly, he had written all the dates on which I had experienced a migraine attack and my menstrual cycle dates. At the bottom of the migraine section, he had written an analysis of how far apart my migraines had become of late, and at the bottom of my menstrual cycle section, he had written the tentative dates of my next cycle with a small message that said, "Remind GM of carrying a sanitary napkin to work. She always forgets." Ex-workers of Reddit, what's the weirdest kink a customer has asked you to fulfill? At the GM of a strip club in Atlanta for 12 years, we had this guy come in every Wednesday with a McDonald's bag and go straight to VIP with the same girl every time. This wasn't ever odd to me, as we allowed you to bring your own food and even order food while you were there. We had a free buffet during the day and ran the kitchen at night, so it wasn't odd for customers wanting to order out or bring in their own food. The owner did not mind it during the day, as it left more free buffet food for the dancers and other customers. On Wednesday, I was in the back talking with the dancer, and the dancer that went into VIP with the same guy was there when the waitress comes in and says he had arrived and she needed to head to VIP room 2 ASAP. She laughed and told her to hold on, she had to get her big heels out of her locker. The other girls started to laugh, and one said she was jealous of the easy money the other girl was about to acquire. Curiosity got the best of me and I asked her what made the money so easy. She then proceeds to tell me that this guy stops at McDonald's before he comes and gets a quarter pounder with cheese, then puts it in a Ziploc bag, and goes to VIP. Her only job while in VIP was to step on the bag quarter pounder with one heel, so it mushed it, and with her other foot to step on the dude's nuts and slap him a bit. She said it was the easiest and funnest $200 she made and looked forward to every Wednesday. Put on her big heels and went to go step on this dude's hamburger and nuts. I accidentally plowed my little cousin. I have a much younger cousin, 3, who I'm quite close with. We have a game that we've played since she could walk, where I would hold her by the waist and we would spin around for a few seconds until we got dizzy. She loves this game, and we played it yesterday because the adults of the family, we're the only ones even remotely close in age, were in another room and talking about something neither of us wanted to listen to. So she asked if we could play the game and I said yes. We assumed the positions and began. However, I was tired as hell and hadn't eaten or drank very much all day. I could feel myself about to fall and my vision was turning grayish as I spun around. I tried to slow down, but momentum kept me circling. I gripped her hands to keep from her literally slipping away, but she took this as a sign to relax her grip. Obviously the speed at which we were traveling was quite fast, since I hadn't managed to slow down, so she went flying. She was propelled towards the wall and hit it face first. It wasn't an enormous impact, but when she turned around her face was already beginning to swell, and although nothing was broken it was clearly going to be a huge bruise. I ran to get her an ice pack, but when I returned everyone was in the room, including her parents, and she'd informed them of what happened and thankfully hadn't made it seem like I'd intentionally flung her into a solid wall, but they knew everything. We aren't allowed to play that game anymore. People who were falsely accused of a serious crime. Was your life ruined? I was getting ready to jump in the shower when I heard a knock on the door. I had a pair of gym shorts on, so I went and answered it. To my amazement, there were a bunch of cops outside. They told me they had had a complaint of loud noise and possibly domestic violence. I just laughed and said, "No, that's not here, I live alone." The officers remained serious. One of them asked me if I had any ID on me so they could go about their business, and I said, "Sure." My wallet was on the wall right by the door, so I pulled my ID out and handed it to one of the officers. He looked at it and asked me if I could step outside again. I kind of chuckled and said, "Yeah, no problem." As soon as I stepped out of the door of my house, the other officer commanded, "Turn around. Put your hands behind your back." I looked at him kind of funny, and I said, "What for?" Again, he told me to turn around. So I turned around, and I put my hands behind my back. Suddenly, I felt handcuffs, and they ordered me to sit down in front of the house. I asked one of the other officers what this was all about. He said, "There's a warrant out for my arrest." Now, mind you, I have never been in any kind of trouble at all in my life. And so again, I kind of chuckled. I said, "What kind of warrant?" The officer said he doesn't know because it was from out of state. Now I'm starting to get a little freaked out. So the officer leads me into the police car. All I have is my gym shorts and flip-flops and my cell phone. They stripped me of my phone immediately. About 45 minutes later, as we were driving to the holding cell, I asked the officer what this was all about. He said he really didn't know, but because the warrant is out of state, they have to take me to jail. He also said there's a no bond clause on this warrant, which means until I figure out what this is, I'm stuck there. I was put into a holding cell with about 15 gang members in Fort Lauderdale Broward County Jail. At about 11 that night, I was transferred to a holding jail, given a 2-inch mattress and a blanket, and was told to go to sleep on the floor. At this point, I've asked probably 4 or 5 officers what's going on, and nobody seems to know. I haven't seen an attorney, and I don't have any telephone numbers memorized. Stupid smartphones. So the next day, I asked an officer again, what's going on, and how do I find out? He comes back and simply says it's an out-of-state warrant, and I'll have to wait to see the judge. I said I want to access my cell phone so I can find some numbers and call somebody. Here's where it gets really bad. I haven't seen a judge for 8 days. I have to spend 8 days in jail not having any idea why, not seeing an attorney and having no access to call anyone. I finally see a judge on the 8th day and he tells me it's an out-of-state warrant, and again he doesn't know what it's for, and I have a choice. I can fight extradition or I can concede to extradition. If I fight, I'm going to probably be there for 60 days minimum and possibly be let out. If I concede, I could be there another 45 days before they take me to the other state. So I conceded and I asked him for the court order to access my phone. The judge says he's never heard of having to have a court order to access a cell phone, but reluctantly gives one. On the 9th day, when I ask to access my phone again, I'm told that they're not going to allow me to access my phone even though they have a court order because the phone battery is dead. Now I don't know what to do. This is the 9th day and it turns into the 10th and 11th and 12th, and so on. On the 23rd day, no one in the world knows where I am. I'm assuming my kids probably think I'm dead, as they live in another state. North Carolina shows up to extradite me on the 23rd day. During this 48-hour trip where I'm shackled hand and foot in the back of a van, I finally convinced one of the officers that is driving to access their Facebook account and message a close friend of mine to try to get in touch. They do that and of course my friend thinks it's a scam. Finally I gave him information that only I would know and he sent his phone number. On the 25th day in North Carolina I finally found out what the charge is. A former client of mine from 4 years prior in a business that I had had and signed over to another partner had accused me of taking $20,000 and fleeing the state. I laughed again. But not real hard this time because this was getting real. As I'm booked into their jail, I'm trying to figure out what to do. The next day I finally saw an attorney. He doesn't have too much information for me but tells me what the charge entails and what the possibilities are for sentencing and things like that. A few days later he comes back with the evidence brought against me. As we went through it, I found nothing at all pointing to any kind of criminal activity from me, which of course I knew because I hadn't done anything. However, I did find a receipt from an unknown company that was in my former partner's handwriting and had his home address as the address for the unknown company. The amount received was $12,000. I told my attorney what I found and then was escorted back to my cell. Days and weeks go by. No news at all. The total amount of time I spent in this jail was 52 days. They demanded $25,000 in cash in order to release me or I was just stuck there. I had access to no money at all. However, I had finally called my buddy who had gotten in touch with my sister and they had let my kids know what was going on. On about the 40th day I woke up with some pain. Looks like I had caught an infection and it was in my right testicle. I had no way to contact a nurse except to put it on a message board requesting medical attention. There was no medical that day, and there was no medical the next day, even though I requested it again. A week later I finally saw a nurse, and told them the infection had spread to my ear. She gave me one antibiotic pill that day and told me I would get another the next day. On the 51st day, I saw my attorney and my attorney told me at this point the DA is not going to offer a plea bargain because the evidence against you doesn't make sense. However, there is a possibility that there will be a plea bargain offer, but it probably won't be for about 6 months. If at that point I plead not guilty, it may be another 6 months to a year before there is a trial. At this point, I just told my attorney that we need to speak to the DA. He says he doesn't have time to do that and I said no problem. Give me the name of the DA and the telephone number and I'll have my sister three-way with me and we'll call him ourselves. Something amazing happened at that point. The next morning my attorney arrived and told me I was getting out that day. The state released me on my signature with no money involved. So I left North Carolina on a Thursday evening and had to take a train back to South Florida. I got home Friday night. Fortunately, through this time, I've spoken to my landlord. Even though I had been evicted because she didn't know where I was, she let me stay. My car had been repoed, the companies that I have done business with had canceled contracts, and one had even charged me back almost $75,000. But at least I had a place to stay. So I began to regroup the next afternoon and I noticed that my eye was hurting. By that night I couldn't see from my right eye and it was in so much pain that I had to call an ambulance. Long story short, I ended up staying the night in the hospital with an infection that had gone into my eye behind my eye and was in the process of getting ready to attack my brain. I lost sight in my right eye that day. Ended up several months later having to have a cornea transplant. The transplant was a year and a half ago, and I still can't see very well out of the eye. Today is July 22nd, almost 2 years from the arrest and the case still hasn't been closed. I've been told over and over that they're going to dismiss the charges, but they haven't done that as of yet. What was the worst thing your ex-girlfriend asked of you that eventually blew up in her face? My ex-girlfriend and I are both 23 years old. We had been together for 4 years at this point. We had a pretty good relationship, or so I thought. I'm in college and working part-time, so I paid the bills. We did not live together. I'm a very romantic guy. So every time we were together, I was all over her, kissing and hugging her. That's my love language. She used to be just like that also. Then, suddenly, she started pulling away from me. She stopped initiating. I somehow knew what was coming my way. I started to pull away as well. I dropped simple hints that I knew something. However, I did not confront her. I didn't touch her either for that entire week. I think that did the trick because, at the end of the week, she confessed. But of course, her confession was with so much gaslighting. Weirdly, she did not shift the blame at me. She then dropped the bomb that she had been going on random dates for 2 weeks at that point. She already liked 5 of them. She said the whole "I want to explore" thing. I just agreed. But I knew that was the end of our relationship. I didn't want her to explode at that point by ending things, so I just played along. She proposed an open relationship with some rules. She said that there should be no sleeping over, no more than 1 or 2 dates with the same person, and no sleeping with friends. I agreed with everything she said. I'm kind of good looking. I'm not very handsome, but I take care of myself. That was enough to flirt with some girls in college or from work. I knew I would have a bunch of dates without dropping a sweat. She is a pretty girl, so she had her share too. But, when I was at her place and had a date that night, she would just stare at me while I dressed up. I knew she was jealous, but I just couldn't give a damn. We barely had intimacy. The affection I gave her before did not exist anymore. She's grown a little depressed over the course of 3 weeks. One night, she asked to make the relationship exclusive again. I couldn't hold it in. I blasted out laughing. I told her no. It was over when she said she wanted an open relationship. I didn't give a damn about our relationship anymore. I just ended things right there, and then I went out for my date. After a couple of days, she blew up my phone, asking for forgiveness. She wanted to get back together. I didn't respond. 2 months have passed, and it's now Christmas here. Her family just passed by and greeted me. They were thanking me for being a good son-in-law for them in the last year. They apologized for their daughter's behavior. That caught me off guard. I didn't think that my ex-girlfriend would tell them the truth about the nature of our breakup, especially because they hadn't contacted me in any way over those 2 months that had passed. My ex-girlfriend and I maintained a little bit of contact, but not the normal one. She was stalking me on my social media accounts. She would leave creepy responses using different profiles. Every time I blocked one, she would create another one. How did I know it was her? She told me while chasing me. She camped outside my house on a weekend day, waiting for me to come out. She ambushed me into talking to her again. When I opened my garage to start working on my bike, she just jumped right in and tried hugging me. It's pretty pathetic. I started running around my house with her, trying to catch me. I was able to call the police and hide inside my house. She kicked my bike down and screwed it up a little bit. Soon, the cops arrived and got her arrested. She resisted, which worsened her situation. I testified, and they let me go. She got admitted to a mental facility for some issues she already had. She hasn't been treated correctly, mostly because of the psychotic breakdown she was having at the moment. I don't really know how she got that obsessed with me. We hadn't talked since I blocked her. I now have a restraining order. I hope to never see her again in my life. Women, what was your nice guy's finish last moment? There was a guy I had a crush on in high school, from the time we were freshmen. He was absolutely infatuated with a girl who was a senior. She had absolutely zero interest in him, being 4 years older and all, but still he pined for her. And I pined for him, doing my best to become his friend in the meantime. Over the next 4 years he did everything to get her to notice him, even joining all of the same clubs and extracurriculars she was in. By the end of our sophomore year I was done waiting for this to subside, and started to talk to and date other guys, though I still remained his best friend. We had become close and I really did care about him. Sadly this was mostly listening to him complain about how she never noticed him. He was perpetually depressed. I still sort of hoped that one day he would just stop focusing on her for a moment and look at me. When we graduated high school he obviously went to the same college she had chosen and picked the same major, even though she was almost done there. I picked a different college because I was done listening to him pine for her at this point, and had a steady boyfriend anyway. After college I reconnected with him on Facebook. I saw no sign of Caroline on his page or friends list, and being hopeful, asked him if he'd like to get dinner. He said yes and I went to pick him up. I had taken a really long time to get ready, get my nails done, have my makeup done, and I was planning on asking him if he wanted to start a relationship that night. About halfway through the dinner he said, "I'm actually really glad you called, I've been feeling really down lately. Caroline just got engaged and asked me to be a groomsman in her wedding." I listened like the good friend I was. I politely finished dinner. I finally gave up, and I have never talked to him again.